Hi, I'm Alison from Canada, and it's my turn to talk about mental illness. I'm 50 years old. I was diagnosed with chronic depressive disorder in the late 1980s. I've been on medication successfully ever since then. I would say that my illness manifested when I was a little girl as mild chronic anxiety, and it became severe when I entered high school. I suffered a complete inability to go to sleep before exams, and I would just lie there being terrified that I wouldn't do well on the exam, and the more frightened I was, the more I couldn't get to sleep, and the more I couldn't sleep, the more frightened I became, until it was a vicious cycle and I would lie awake the whole night long. I was a straight A student and did really well on my tests even without any sleep, but somehow that data didn't affect the fact that I still couldn't sleep when I had a test coming. I remember having moments when I would be almost asleep and then I'd realize it and it would jerk me awake because I'd get excited, and then of course I was wide awake and I'd have to start all over again. I do remember telling my mom about the problem, but I don't think she really realized how bad it was. I don't think my parents really got involved at all. I don't remember talking to them about it. And I think I felt like it was just my problem, that there was something wrong with me and I needed to keep sticking at it until I could figure it out and lick it by myself. And this anxiety-based insomnia was at its worst when I was a teenager and in university, but it's really never gone away. It's just improved as I've gotten older. It's not quite such a big deal. As a teenager, I self-medicated the anxiety with aerobic exercise. I would jog for miles and miles or work out on a stationary bicycle. Both of these really helped the feelings of anxiety to be subdued for a while. Plus they also addressed the obsession that I had with my weight. I was really lucky that I didn't develop anorexia at that time, because I could have easily. I actually was quite slim, but I always thought I was fat. I look at pictures of me now. Now I look at pictures of me then and realize how normal I was, and I never knew it at the time, and I wish I could have just loved myself the way I was. I suffered pretty severe postpartum depression after the birth of my first child, though I was only diagnosed years later. I really don't know how I survived that time. My second child came 19 months later, and I had less severe postpartum depression after her birth. My depression has, for the most of my life, been distractible and variable. I have better days and worse days, and I'm mostly able to hold suicidal thoughts at bay, especially when my kids were little, because I couldn't bear the thought of leaving them alone. I hid my depression really well. I mostly always have. At the time when my girls were little, my very best friend had no idea that I was suffering. I was too ashamed. I had no way of describing what my problem was. I didn't know I was depressed. I just thought I was weak and had low character and wasn't doing things right spiritually, and that somehow I deserved to suffer. And I was really ashamed of that, and so I hid it as well as I could. I had several experiences of being judged for struggling to get through what seemed like normal activities to others. There was a time when my girls were little, before I was diagnosed, that I turned to my church community for help. It was before I was diagnosed, and my pastor at the time was trying to help me with prayer and Bible passages. And these things sometimes helped for a little while and eased the feelings temporarily, but mostly they just left me feeling like I wasn't doing it right. I wasn't praying right. Somehow I wasn't following God right, and that's why I was suffering. I was having a lot of trouble with fatigue, uncontrollable weeping, and profound loneliness and sadness. And I was caring for my 2 little girls far away from family and friends. And my husband was at work most days and some evenings too. I finally got enough courage to ask one of the more caring women in my church community if maybe the women could help me a bit, just for a few weeks, with some meals or keeping me company or helping with some of the housework. And the church women had a meeting about it and told me by phone later that they wouldn't help me because then every tired young mother would expect help. Their judgment felt terrible on many levels. I felt really ashamed. I felt ashamed of needing help, and even more ashamed for asking for it and then being judged unworthy. Of course, neither they nor I knew that I wasn't just a tired young mother. I was sick. I was sick and I was alone, and I really needed help. But instead, I felt more ashamed that I couldn't function the way I thought I should, and tried even harder to get through it alone and to hide it. It breaks my heart when I look back at how needlessly I suffered for so long. If my story or anyone else's story here at It's My Turn can help someone else realize that their illness is not their fault and that they deserve support, then telling my story has been worth it. I was not diagnosed until several years after the birth of my 2nd child, at which time I was put on the serotonin antagonist and reuptake inhibitor, trazodone. I was on that for a few months until it became clear that the profound sleepiness it induced, and which was not getting any better over time, made it quite difficult for me to function. I was struggling just to stay awake so that I could watch our 2 little girls and keep them safe. So my doctor suggested that I try the brand new antidepressant called Prozac. After a few weeks on Prozac, it was as if someone had lifted a heavy blanket off my personality. I felt like being alive again. I had the energy to get up and to care for myself and for my kids again, and even felt like cleaning and decorating and creating new projects. I began singing around the house, laughing at the cute things my girls did, and enjoying being with them the way I always should have. Life was worth living, and the tiny things that used to knock me flat with discouragement before were seen for what they were, the usual bumps and inconveniences that happen on the road of life. Since that time in the late 1980s, I have been on antidepressants non-stop, except for the few months in which I chose to conceive our 3rd child. I was just 3 months pregnant before the Prozac had completely left my bloodstream, and that is when I realized just how much I had relied on it to function. I managed to cope somehow well into the 6th month of pregnancy, at which point the overwhelming despair and fatigue were producing suicidal thoughts. The doctor put me back on Prozac even though I was pregnant, considering that the risk to both the child and to myself through suicide was greater than the possible risk to the baby from the medication. Our son was born full-term and healthy and is today a thriving, intelligent 19-year-old, but he did suffer from some unusual childhood illnesses, which caused me feelings of guilt and self-doubt at the time. I couldn't help wondering if taking the antidepressants while I was carrying him had caused the problems, and if I could have prevented them if I had only been stronger. The truth is that to this day there's no indication of any connection between the medication and his early health troubles. It looks much more likely that they were food allergy related, among other things. But at the time, it was a very hard thing to consider. I wouldn't judge another woman in the same situation, but I couldn't help but judge myself. So I am Alison from Canada, and I live with mental illness. If you sat down next to me at a coffee shop, you would see an intelligent, expressive, hardworking woman, not someone who's mentally ill. I am creative and funny and caring and compassionate. I'm a dreamer, a writer, a teacher, a performer, and a musician. I'm a mother, a godmother, an aunt, and a best friend. I was a successful, competent wife for 24 years and am now amicably divorced for reasons not connected with my illness. My 3 children are happy, well-adjusted adults living productive lives in society. I'm a graduate student, a published author, and solely by the grace of God or dumb luck have yet to be hospitalized for the depression that has been my constant companion for more than 40 years. For now, I am successfully employed and will soon be returning to school full-time for a doctorate. But I tell you, on my bad days and during my tougher weeks, I wonder if I should just give up and go on long-term disability. When this black dog rears its ugly head, it is very formidable. However, for now, thanks to antidepressants, my loving friends and my kids, and my wonderful therapist, I am functioning in society as a normal person, and am grateful every day for this. In fact, I go for long periods when I forget that I have any health issues at all. My daily meds are part of my vitamin routine, and I don't even consider what life would be like without them. I am Alison from Canada. I am one person living with mental illness. You are not alone, and we'll make it through this together.